Good morning. I'm Reverend Mary Shaver. I'm happy to be speaking with the Austin Center for Spiritual Living today. The last time I spoke here was in July of 2019, almost a year ago. That was the day we said our goodbyes and we're off to Paris for the following year. And what a year it has been. We've all had to learn new skills, new ways to be, new tricks, new friends, and reconnecting in a new way with old friends. Last time I spoke to the community, it was in a building with tables and chairs and a lectern. Perhaps you remember those days.
One of the things that's changed is the way we do church. Who knew that the Brady Bunch were way showers? We're mastering our Zoom skills, unlike Alice, who, by the way, is not in the picture. I can now turn my video on and off, and I can enter a message in the chat. I can use the icons for applause. I can join a breakout session, and I can mute and unmute myself. These are real accomplishments. I can have the video on or off. A lot of people showing up in pajamas or full makeup, or your picture that's on when your video is not on. My picture's from 2004, but don't tell anybody. Also, we see photobombing cats and dogs and kids. We connect remotely. That used to be an oxymoron, connect remotely. But now it's the way that we do things. And so we need to do that in a mindful way, which brings me to the topic of the month of June, which is mindful Mavericks. So mindfulness, being fully aware of all things in the present moment, and a maverick is something that's unbranded, someone who is their own person. Well, if I must admit, I think we all have a bit of maverick in us, and we might as well be mindful about it. Last week, Reverend Jenna spoke about mindful intentions, and today I'll be talking about mindful speech, or as I like to call it, unmute yourself. So much has changed since I've been gone, and yet nothing has changed. Yes, the form changes, people come and go, and we experience cycles such as the solstice, which occurred yesterday. However, behind all of that is truth with a capital T. There is still an eternal, changeless, timeless, creative intelligence behind all that is. To borrow from Ernest Holmes, I believe in the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause, and that all people are incarnations of that one Spirit. I believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul, forever and ever expanding. I also agree when he states that the ultimate goal of life is to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. I believe in the unity of all life, in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all. And I used to have a great fear. Does anyone know what the number one fear is in the United States? If you said public speaking, you're right. In fact, public speaking is listed as America's number one fear before death. You know what that means? That means that most people would rather die than do public speaking. Well, public speaking was not my fear, as you may have noticed. My fear was sparked by the Sunday school stories of biblical prophets, especially Moses. So here's my fear. My fear was that God would call me to do something I was not prepared for and I did not want to do. See, when I was a child, I heard the story of Moses in Sunday school. Oh, which reminds me, who was the most high-tech prophet? Moses. He had 2 tablets connected to the cloud. Okay, back to the scary part. Moses was asked to do something he didn't want to do. He was not prepared to do. He didn't feel confident doing that. Now here's the question. Can you say no to God? So here's the burning bush sequence as I heard it. So Moses sees this burning bush in the desert. It's burning for no apparent reason, and it does not burn up. It is not consumed. And this intrigued Moses. So he went to investigate and to think about what he was seeing, to be mindful. And while he's contemplating the burning bush, God speaks to Moses and says, "Go and tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites depart from his land." Well, I'm not sure he said it exactly that way, but you get the idea. And Moses says, "Why should Pharaoh listen to me, a man of impeded speech?" So Moses attempts to wriggle out of God's calling him to go to the Pharaoh to let his people go. He claims he's not a good public speaker, and even that he has a speech impediment. It's like he's a reluctant athlete on the bench who's scared to play. Moses repeats his appeal to God yet again. "I stutter. How then should Pharaoh heed me?" So imagine not the Charlton Heston character from the movie Exodus, but a shy man with little or no self-confidence and a speech impediment. And yet he inspired an entire nation to freedom and a new way of life. Did he blame his parents for not instilling self-confidence and his genetics for giving him a speech impediment? No. He did what God called him to do, although not right away. And God provided assistance in the form of Aaron, who was a better speaker. So this story of Moses now is a reminder for me that even with impeded speech, we can do great things. You know, sometimes we're frightened to speak. The story of Moses, though, he never gets into trouble when he's speaking. He gets into trouble when he does not speak. And sometimes we're frightened to speak, to express that which is most true for us, because we fear the repercussions of stating our thoughts or feelings or our observations about the world. We wonder if we're safe, or we feel we do not have the communication tools or the skills necessary to share effectively. So sometimes we say very little, or only what's needed, or we say the few things that we feel comfortable saying through a microphone, letting the volume make up for what we cannot express. Or perhaps we say a lot, but it has little meaning. We distract ourselves with many, many words or jokes. And there's times when these methods serve us. And yet, when we move into a more mindful speech, we have a greater possibility of communicating in a more meaningful and more truthful way. Okay, so I need to develop mindful speech. Okay, sounds simple maybe, but can I really do that? So here's some examples from biblical characters who overcame their personal challenges, and if they can do it, so can you. For example, Abraham was too old. Isaac was a daydreamer. Leah, unattractive. Joseph was abused and abandoned by his brothers. And Moses, we already heard, has a stuttering problem. Elijah was suicidal. Isaiah preached naked. Jonah ran from God. Job, bankrupt. John the Baptist ate bugs. Peter denied Jesus, and the disciples fell asleep while praying. The Samaritan woman was divorced more than once. Paul was too religious. And for heaven's sakes, Lazarus was dead. Harvey Milk, an American politician, the first openly gay elected official in the history of California, said, "Hope is never silent." Now, this does not mean that hope cannot come forward in silent moments or that silence is not a healthy part of mindful speech. Because to get to a place of mindful speech, we also have to be mindful listeners. We listen to ourselves and to others and to the silence. So it's possible that what Harvey Milk was saying is that when we silence ourselves or silence others, not much happens. Inner and outer transformation comes through intentional language. What we say to ourselves, what we build with others, and what we say out broadly to the world makes a difference. So Harvey Milk's campaign manager wrote of him, he said, "What set Harvey apart from you or me was that he was a visionary. He imagined a righteous world inside his head. And then he set about to create it for real, for all of us." This is what Fred Rogers said, our dear Mr. Rogers. "We live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say, it's not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. And then there are those who see the need and respond. And these people, I consider those people to be my heroes." If we go back to the Bible, learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. That's from Isaiah 1:17. So all this brings up a lot in me. I don't know if it brings up a lot in you, but I'd like to take a few minutes now to give you a chance to talk to a couple of other people about what it does bring up for you. So we'll go into a breakout session and then come back for the rest of the story. And then these are your questions. What tough questions am I asking myself today? And what is mine to do? You can either answer both of those, one of those, whatever it takes, and or whatever's up for you. Just, I want you to talk to each other and let your voice be heard. So remember to unmute yourself and go into the breakout room. See you in a bit. Now, I'm going to return to the words of the John Denver song, which I love. And Lisa did such a beautiful job of it. What one man can do is dream. What one man can do is love. What one man can do is change the world. So, dream, check. Love, check. Change the world. How do you change the world? Now, for years, on the front of the Science of Mind magazine, there was a line that said, "Change your thinking, change your life." So what if, when I change my thinking, I act according to that new thought? And if I act according to that new thought, I get a different result. And if my new thought is to speak up, and that new thought precipitates a change in the thinking of other people because I spoke up, now does that change their lives too? So what would the world be like if I decided to unmute myself? What would the world be like if I took a stand for peace, a stand for love, a stand for equality, a stand for social justice? What would the world be like if I changed my thinking to be brave enough to speak? What would it be like? So this is why I appreciate the message that came from our Centers for Spiritual Living spiritual leader, Edward Viljoen. It came out this week. It's really important, and I would like to read it to you now. This is what he said. Black Lives Matter, a message from Reverend Dr. Edward Viljoen, spiritual leader. Centers for Spiritual Living stands with people all around the world who are advocating for justice, equity, inclusion, and peace. We are motivated by our vision of a world that works for everyone, and therefore we affirm with the people of the world that Black lives matter. Not only do Black lives matter, but according to our teaching, they are sacred. We have confidence that the momentum of support from individuals, along with spiritual and secular organizations, is more than a fleeting moment, but rather the herald of lasting change. We have a confidence that a new era of willingness to engage in the inner work that leads to the end of racism in our world has begun. We have confidence that the unifying cry of our global heart, that Black Lives Matter, has struck a note of urgency in all who will hear it. And above all, we have confidence that the living Spirit Almighty is working through us to bring our stated belief in oneness into form, in the social, political, judicial, spiritual, and economic realms, and importantly, in our hearts. The recent tragic loss of Black lives in the United States and other countries due to police violence and the myriad inequities that have resurfaced have revealed that our world is still catching up to the vision of a world that works for everyone. We have been called to be brave enough to examine how society can be out of step with its values and how we, as individuals, can be out of step with our spiritual values. One of our values in Centers for Spiritual Living is love as the self-givingness of the divine to all creation, expressing through us as compassion, caring, mutual respect, and kindness. Our organization's purpose is to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence. What can be more spiritually magnificent than to say a full-hearted yes to this upswelling of affirmation of the sacredness of Black lives? We invite you to stand with Centers for Spiritual Living and the people of the world by affirming with us that Black lives matter, so that we may demonstrate the values of our teaching and embrace the emerging universal consciousness of oneness. And from Ernest Holmes, let us therefore light the candle of love, human kindness, forgiveness, and understanding in our soul, and let it shine brightly. Let us not peer into the darkness, troubled and concerned because it is so foreboding and unknown. Rather, let us remain steadfast in the radiance of that spiritual light of truth within ourselves. Let us stand guard so that the winds of malice, cross-purpose, ignorance, or misunderstanding will not blow out the light. Let us so live each day that the light from our candle of spiritual knowledge will forever be clear and understood, not only by ourselves, but by all with whom we come in contact. See, I just realized that I'm guilty. I studied history and I bought the version that was taught. And this is what I learned recently. There is so much I don't know. There is so much I don't know. But there's still time to learn. I care. And so I want to learn. So I was glad to see this note that came out again from Centers for Spiritual Living. They said, many have been asking the question, what can I do? As a community of seekers and learners, we know that we can expand our awareness in support of the rising consciousness around racism and its impact on the lives of people of color. So this got my attention. And I read further and it said, together, we will dive deeply into the heart of unconscious bias and racism to learn how we can make a difference at this pivotal time in history. And so they have started a book study. This will be starting up. There's a couple of sessions. I believe one starts in August. So it's about a month away, 5-session, a book study experience. If you'd like more information on this, then let us know and we will get that to you. But this is the place, this is the time to do that, to listen and to learn. And so mindful speech occurs when we mindfully listen. This mindfulness occurs when we can slow down, which we've been apt to do lately. Breathe in. Breathe in, breathe out. Step out of the reactivity, whether that reactivity results in us shutting down or results in us striking out, and align ourselves with the truest truth within us. When we speak from that place, we speak a world of love and power into being. Mindfulness, mindful speech gives us a greater access to building that world that works for everyone. And since I care, I listen and I learn. And I hope to remember to listen. And I hope we hear each other on a deeper level and with kindness. We can all learn from each other. I promise to keep trying. And then maybe, just maybe, there'll come a day when I can unmute myself. Oh, and let us join together in consciousness. Join together in consciousness, knowing the truth, knowing that there is one power, one presence, one infinite source, knowing that that is all there is. And that is more than enough. That is the all in all. It is everything. It is closer than hands and feet. It is the creative energy within me, and it is greater than anything I can imagine. And in this, I know that there comes about that manifestation of good, that manifestation of love, that outpicturing of peace, of joy, of wisdom spoken, of beauty and truth. These are the qualities of spirit, and they cannot be contained. They cannot be backed. They cannot be muted, and the video cannot be turned off. This is spirit in action, and there is no stopping it. And so I get in the flow of life. I allow myself to flow in spirit as I listen, as I learn, as I come into a new understanding, and I cannot be kept still. This is what's happening around our planet. So speak the truth as you know it, as it comes through you. And know that divine spirit will provide Aaron if you need somebody to speak for you. If you need somebody that the Pharaoh will listen to, speak up, make your voice heard, and join with your brothers and sisters in life itself. I give thanks for this divine spirit moving through us at a new level. I give thanks. I let it be. I take a stand, and so it is.